Hey guys, this is going to be a review of Ni No Kuni. I finally finished this game just yesterday. It took around 38 hours to beat, which doesn't seem that long, but there's more to this game than that. I'll talk about that later. This has been one of my most anticipated games for 2013, as I'm sure a lot of you know. A lot of YouTubers have been playing this. Of course, the Wizards edition for this game, there's a lot of controversy there with a lot of people not getting their special editions and whatnot. I settled for the regular edition. This is my first level 5 game, and I gotta say, I'm very impressed. I know White Knight Chronicles, apparently that one's not so great. I haven't gotten around to that one yet, so it'll be interesting to see how that compares with this and their other level 5's other games. I'm going to be playing Rogue Galaxy soon, so it's going to be interesting to see how it compares to this. But this game is fantastic. Before I get down into the review, I gotta say, if you have any kind of interest in RPGs in the slightest, please go out and buy this game. Support Level 5 and Namco Bandai. I mean, this is a phenomenal game. I'll start with the story. You basically play as a little boy named Oliver. I don't want to go too much into spoilers, but you're basically trying to save a certain person. There's two worlds to this game. There's an actual 1950s kind of America city type world. You don't explore that world too often, but you can jump between that world and the fantasy world, which is where the majority of the game takes place. And you play as Oliver, and you're trying to rescue a loved one. It gets to be a bit more than that. It kind of goes into a kind of save the world type storyline later, which I know is cliche and done to death, but the way this game does it, I think it's fun. It's got a lot of humor too to this game. Your main companion is a fairy named Drippy, and he's probably one of the greatest characters I've seen in a JRPG. Really, he's got this Welsh accent. He's really funny. The writing that was done for him is fantastic. Actually, overall, the writing, the localization work for this game was fantastic. Just the writing is full of so much wit and charm. It's just fun to read what every character has to say. But in terms of the story, the main villain is what I find kind of interesting, the White Witch herself. She seems kind of just like a typical bad guy in the early hours, but towards the end of the game, she becomes a really interesting character. And towards the end of the game is when the story gets really interesting. I'd say for the first half, it's nothing special. The second half is where things definitely start to get a bit interesting. So overall, without diving too deep into the story, because it's definitely something I want people to experience for themselves, it's just a really good storyline. Of course, it's nothing crazy. As far as JRPGs go, though, it's definitely pretty damn good. The visuals, I gotta talk about the visuals. The visuals in this game, absolutely amazing. They're breathtaking. The amount of environment variety in this game and how gorgeous each environment looks, the amount of detail put into this game, it's just such a fun world to explore because of how visually stunning it is. I love the art style they've used. It's just, Studio Ghibli, obviously, this is a collaboration between Level 5 and Studio Ghibli. Their influence is felt, obviously. The animations they've done for this game are absolutely beautiful. There's not too many of those. Most of the game is done in the game engine, with the game engine's graphics, but, that's all top-notch. The world map is one of the best looking, or it is the best looking world map I've seen in a game. It's so fun to explore because it's so beautiful. Really, I don't know, out of all the games I've played this generation, I find it hard to think of a game with better visuals than this from an artistic standpoint. From a technical standpoint, you've got games like Halo 4 and whatnot, but from an artistic standpoint, you can't really get much better than Ni No Kuni. And that goes with the soundtrack too, and the sound effects. This game has an orchestral soundtrack, done by, I guess, the guy that composed a lot of the music for the Studio Ghibli films, or all of them, I think. Now, I'm usually not too big into orchestral soundtracks in terms of video games. I find a lot of them sound the same and are really boring. You hear it a lot in these AAA games, like God of War, Assassin's Creed, things like that. And in those kind of games, I'm just always bored by them. I much prefer, old retro kind of soundtracks. But the soundtrack in this game, this is how you do an orchestral soundtrack. It is absolutely phenomenal. There's so many, like every song in this game is just perfect and fits every environment where it's used. A lot of the tunes are very catchy and whimsical. I don't know, the soundtrack just completely caught me off guard with this game. And I hope when I do hear more orchestral soundtracks in JRPGs that they're as good as this, because this is just top-notch. The voice acting is another part of this game that's amazing. Each character has a great voice actor, with maybe the exception being Oliver himself. I found whoever voiced him did I don't know, his voice is very monotone. There's not much emotion in his voice, I found. But all the rest of the characters are great, and like I mentioned before, Drippy, the voice actor that did him is absolutely incredible. The sound effects are amazing too. Just from a presentation standpoint, this game is top-notch, and it's definitely one of the best parts of the game. Now I'll talk about the gameplay, which is probably the least interesting part of this game, but still great. The battle system itself is, I want to say, apparently it's pretty similar to White Knight Chronicles. It's a mix of turn-based and real-time, where enemies can always be attacking you, and all your familiars, which, actually I should probably talk about that first. The battle system, you can use your characters, Oliver and your other party members, but they're very weak. You don't really want to use them in battles too much. You got to be using your familiars, which are essentially Pokemon. You can capture them. They're all over the world. You can feed them, level them up. Those are the majority of, you'll be doing the majority of fighting with the familiars. And basically, you send these familiars out, and you can switch between them, and each familiar has different moves as well as your own characters. So you're constantly switching characters and familiars and using spells, and to choose all that is the turn-based part of the battle system, but everything else is in real time. Enemies can attack you, you can attack enemies. While your familiars are in their attack animations and their spell animations, you can get hit. It's a fun battle system. At first it seems too simple, but later it gets really deep, really complex. You'll be constantly switching and going through your menus, using items, using healing, setting tactics for your AI. A big part of the game, too, is defending and evasion. Usually a lot of the bosses and... well, mostly just the bosses, will have these charge-up moves where it'll tell you when they're charging up for these attacks. And if you don't defend or evade quick enough, they can bring out these massive attacks that will do major damage. You always got to be watching out for that. The problem with that is, I found, a lot of the times if you're in the middle of an attack, a magic attack, or in the middle of healing or whatnot, there's a lot of times where the bosses can pull off the charge attack before you can even reach the defend in your menu. I've died playing this game quite a bit because of that. Another reason is due to the AI. No matter what tactics I set my AI partners on, whether it was conserving magic or whatnot, I'd find they would always die and do things I wouldn't want them to do. I'll just put it out there. This game's tough. I died quite a bit on the normal difficulty. There's a lot of bosses that just kicked my ass, but I did eventually beat them the second or third time around. The final boss in particular is actually quite difficult. So if you're looking for a challenge, Ni No Kuni certainly offers it. A lot is said about... I've been reading a lot of reviews, at least the negative ones, to see what they thought about the game. A lot of them mentioned grinding. I didn't find you had to grind too much. I will admit there is a lot of battling in this game. When you're on the world map, you can dodge enemies pretty easily if you want to. However, in the dungeons themselves, if an enemy sees you, you have to fight them. You're not going to get away. So you can dodge enemies to a point, but a lot of the times you just can't in those dungeons. And I found you always, if they see you, always go after the enemies. There's been a lot of times in this game, if they catch you from behind, the enemies, they get, a head start on you and can attack you right away. I'd say 50% of the time I was put in those kind of situations, I'd die. There's also random enemy battles where you'll just die, whether it be to the poor AI or whatnot. So I don't know, the battle system has its frustrations, but overall, it's very fun, especially later in the game once you've kind of gotten a bunch of familiars and are leveling them up. That's another fun part of the game, going and taming these familiars. It's not like Pokemon where you have an item and you can capture them. The more you fight of a particular familiar, the better chance one of your party members has to tame them. So that's all easy. Each character you have can control 3 familiars, so you can have actually 12 characters in battle at once. Obviously only 3 can be active at any given time, but it's a lot to manage, and that's where the complexity and tactics come in. So it's a much deeper battle system than the beginning of the game would lead you to believe. The world map exploration is just, it's so fun. That's one of my favorite parts of the game, just exploring the world map and all the different environments. The towns, I have to mention the towns. The towns are so creative from a visual standpoint. They're just fantastic. I'll mention the side quests, because there's quite a lot of side quests. You have your typical hunting side quests, where you have to find certain monsters and you hunt them, and you'll get rewards. And one of the reasons why I like those quests, and actually a little thing about this game that I didn't see mentioned in reviews, but I love, and that's the map. The map in this game is excellent. It tells you where all the key NPCs are. If you're looking for these monsters, they'll be represented by a flashing blue dot on your mini-map. You generally always have a good idea of where you're supposed to be going and what you're supposed to be doing, which I find a lot of JRPGs lack, and I love that about this game. So there is the hunting side quests, and then there's the other side quests. For an example, there's one side quest that happens throughout the game where you have to catch a certain, tame certain familiars and bring them to this guy and he'll reward you. There's just different quests like that. Now, what these quests give you, other than rewards, are merit points, and this is a system I love. You can basically get all these merit points and they're added onto a merit card. I think like 10 merit points equals 1 merit card, and you can cash in these merit cards for like different abilities. Examples would be like running faster on the world map's an ability. Another one is to you get more MP, or your spells cost less MP. There's making your boat get faster when you eventually get a boat. And yeah, there's airship travel and boat travel and stuff like that. It's really easy to get around the world map. Now these abilities, at first, there's like 3 tiers of abilities, and the first tier of abilities, there's a couple of them in there that I didn't really want, so I avoided them. And I didn't know this, but for the majority of the game, I was avoiding those, and I was realizing that I wasn't unlocking the next tier of abilities, and that's because I had to actually get every single ability in the first tier. So I missed out on a lot of abilities for the majority of the game, and that might have made it a bit tougher for me. There's one final ability I won't spoil, but it's very useful. You'll need a lot of merit cards to get that, though. A lot of the game is mending broken hearts, and what this is, you have about 8 different kind of hearts you can get from people, whether it be like, I think courage is one, enthusiasm is another. You have to find these NPCs that have too much of one kind of heart, and you kind of take a bit of their heart and give it to people that need them. If an NPC is lacking courage as a part of a quest, you got to find some other NPC that has courage and give it to them. And this is pretty simple, because oftentimes the game will tell you exactly what you need for each NPC, and the NPCs that have heart for you to take are flash green on the mini-map, which again I love. It cuts down on a lot of the tedium of running around and wandering aimlessly trying to find out which characters have heart and what heart you're supposed to give to other characters. A lot of the quests in the game are these, and decidedly they are simple, but they're pretty fun, and there's always little interesting stories with them. Now, in the dungeons themselves are basically consist of running down different corridors and solving pretty simple puzzles. Oliver basically gets a bunch of magic spells throughout this game, and you can use them to solve puzzles. I'll be honest, most of them are really simple. Using a fireball spell to break the ice, or using a bridge spell to make a bridge across a chasm. They're not too involved, honestly. I'd say that's maybe a weakness of the game. The dungeons aren't too involved. They're basically point A to point B. They're pretty short though, and that's good because there are a lot of enemies in dungeons, and I think I mentioned that earlier. And you'll be running into pretty much every enemy in these dungeons, so it's good that they don't overstay their welcome. I've heard other level 5 games, they last maybe a bit too long. These dungeons aren't super complex, they're not maze-like, which is good, so I actually loved the dungeons. I thought they were very fun. The game overall is just paced really well. You'll never get bored. I should also mention the Wizard's Companion. You have this book where you can kind of look through it and kind of find different alchemy things, which I'll mention that soon. You know, what different spells are. You'll get these different kind of tales, these little stories you can read. There's like a different, there's like kind of like a language in the book too that you can kind of study and solve kind of puzzles using this book. And how the book is set up in the menu is excellent. You can zoom in, zoom out, flip through pages really quickly and really easily. It's fantastic. And that's the one thing the Wizard's Edition has that I wish I would have got. That Wizard's Companion book looks amazing. That would have helped out quite a bit. So would a strategy guide. Going through the game, it took me, like I said before, 38 hours to beat. And that's doing a majority of the side quests. There's probably maybe 6 or 7 that I didn't do. At least that I had found, because I didn't know exactly what to do. Like, they're the kind of quests that you obviously need a strategy guide to figure out. Now, when you do end up beating the game, there's a ton of post-game content. And I'm basically going through that stuff now. So you'll definitely get your hours worth, especially trying to catch all the different familiars in the game, trying to get all the different weapons and items, and all of this stuff is listed in numbers in the Wizard's Companion, which is perfect. So if you're going for 100% completion in this game, it won't be too tedious, which is excellent. A lot of the things this game does, it's fresh, it's unique, and it's accessible. This game is just never frustrating or tedious, I found. It's very, I don't know, it's just excellent. Now, I mentioned alchemy. You can also get an alchemy pot, like I think Dragon Quest VIII has this too, where you can kind of combine different items and make new ones. I'll admit, I didn't use that too often because a lot of it it depends on trial and error, trying out different things. But you do unlock formulas throughout the game by completing some side quests, and honestly, if you're into that, I'm sure you can make some really overpowered weapons and armor for your familiars and actually blaze through the game. So there's that to explore too. Honestly, just tons of optional content, and just really, this game is fantastic. I think I've covered about everything. I gotta say, if you have any interest in RPGs, definitely check out Ni No Kuni. You won't be disappointed, and I'm very excited to see what else Level 5 has to offer. I know Dragon Quest VIII is a popular favorite, and I know that's apparently quite similar to this game. But yeah, Ni No Kuni, absolutely loved it. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.